Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this Cherry Live. I'm Alita, member of the Cherry Health team. If you're not familiar with Cherry Health, we're a physician and medical network across Canada where you can find jobs, post jobs, network with other healthcare professionals, all for free on the platform. So you can check that out. Cherry Lives, if this is your first Cherry Live, Cherry Lives are a series of sessions where we bring in innovators, thought leaders, practitioners within the healthcare ecosystem in Canada to talk about the things that matter to healthcare professionals, whether that's getting your finances in order, whether it's taking care of yourself, like in today's session, and avoiding burnout, or perhaps ways to better enable the workflows within your practice and clinic. These are all topics that we like to discuss and that we hope to be able to bring to this ecosystem. Afterwards, if you have any topics that you think would be interesting for you and for people within Canada, please let us know. You can always respond to the email that we send out following the session with topics that you think would be great. I'm very excited for today's conversation where we're going to be chatting all about battling burnout with our co-hosts today, Nathaniel Ernst, who is an accredited professional kinesiologist and personal trainer operating out of Calgary, Alberta. He's the owner, owner and operator of NATEFIT Integrated Fitness and Nutrition, dedicated to a wide range of services, including injury rehab, weight management, and lifestyle coaching. I'm going to let Nate tell a little bit about his overall philosophy as well, and introduce himself a bit further. But in today's session, we're really going to dig into how to battle burnout, how to identify it and recognize it, and then find ways of coping with it and avoiding getting into it in the first place. And also some ways that you can identify it and manage it within the workplace. Something that we know is that a lot of healthcare professionals are feeling the crunch and getting burnt out. And with the race for talent that we're experiencing in Canada right now, those organizations, those leaders who can help support their employees and their teams more effectively with healthcare type supports are going to be the ones that pull ahead and are going to be the ones that win out for the race of talent that we're currently facing. So without further ado, Nathaniel, aka NATEFIT, aka for the topic of today, Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit first about your philosophy as a trainer and in your space, and then we'll get into your experience with burnout and some of the story that you've got there.
Thank you, Alita. As you had mentioned before, I'm a kinesiologist and personal trainer out of Calgary, Alberta. I'm the owner operator of NATEFIT Integrated Fitness and Nutrition, where we work to improve the lives of our clients through our philosophy of building small, sustainable habits. We want to create a lasting lifestyle change for our clients. So we don't want to change too many things at once. And this is a common theme that I'll talk about when we talk about the foundations of health, is building small, sustainable habits. Long-term change. We do this through weight loss, strength training, and injury rehab. What I'm here to talk to you about today is burnout and how to harness the power of health and fitness. In today's talk, we'll be covering what burnout is, what are the symptoms of burnout, the consequences, identifying workplace contributors to burnout, and then what you can do about it, hopefully leaving you with some actionable tools that you can use today to help cope with stress and burnout. I'm going to start off by telling you a story that I think a lot of you can relate to. 7 years ago, I started my company, NATEFIT, and like most healthcare workers, I wanted to help people. And I wanted to do this through my passion for health and fitness. So I worked extremely hard at the beginning to fill up my schedule with clients for what I thought would be a successful personal training company. So this included 8 to 10 hour sessions a day, 8 to 10 1-hour sessions a day, followed by notes and working on the business afterward. And I was on track to building that successful personal training business that I set out to do. I plugged away at a full schedule for months, giving everything I had to my clients. And then time for myself became scarce as I focused so much on helping others. So I that saved time and energy. These choices included convenient, less healthy food options, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. When you don't have the time or energy, you start going to fast food restaurants. You start choosing whatever is convenient to save you time. And then I started exercising less because I didn't have the time or energy. These two things led to more stress, which started impacting my sleep. So I started having trouble falling asleep. I started waking up throughout the night, stressed out. And this turned into a perpetual cycle of negative health choices that affected every aspect of my life until I finally hit a breaking point and I was forced to take the week off. I think a lot of people in the health industry or the healthcare industry can really relate to that. You give everything you have to your patients, to your clients, and you have nothing left for yourself. So I thought that's what was best for everybody else, giving everything to everybody else. And the irony of me being a health coach, too focused on telling everyone else how to lead this healthy, balanced lifestyle, that I wasn't leading it myself until I burnt myself out in the process. So I ended up taking a week off and I traveled to Mexico thinking it would be nice and relaxing and I'd have a little bit of fun. But you know what I did during that week in Mexico? I slept the entire time. There was maybe a couple days at the end there where I was actually able to relax and enjoy myself, but I was so overwhelmed. There was nothing else I could do. I didn't have any energy, but just sleep. So towards the end of the trip, I was finally able to start reflecting on what had actually happened and how I became burnout. And I came to two realizations. The first one and the most obvious one was that my career at this pace was not sustainable. I couldn't continue this way. And then number two was that when I was burnt out, I lost my passion for helping others through health and fitness. And I think a lot of healthcare workers can relate to this. You go in it because you want to help people. And then when you're burnt out, you lose that passion for helping people and it just becomes a job, not something that you enjoy doing anymore. Mm-hmm. So I spent the next month focusing on the foundations of health, or what I knew were the foundations of health, in order to get my life back in order and start enjoying my career again. So for today's sake, we're going to focus on three foundations. We're going to focus on exercise, nutrition, and sleep. This over time has led to a drastic reduction in my burnout, as well as gave me a roadmap to taking care of myself when my life and career gets busy. So the question, what is burnout? Well, burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive or prolonged stress. It comes with a feeling of depersonalization, a sense of reduced personal accomplishment, and emotional exhaustion. And those three are important because we're going to use those later, talk about those later on how you can measure burnout. Mm-hmm. So burnout is a prolonged state of stress. It's not a feeling you get every once in a while when you're upset or frustrated at work. Burnout is a chronic condition from too much stress over a long period of time.
Yeah, again, I think, I'll just pause you there because I think that's so important for people to recognize that, what is burnout and what isn't. And you just mentioned, it's not that moment where you're like, oh man, this job and being, maybe frustrated with a short period of time's frustrations, which are normal for all of us in any career. So it's not kind of being over it at work or frustrated by something, or even deciding that you want to change careers. It's that prolonged state of stress that people can get into and live into.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about the symptoms as well, because again, burnout is a prolonged state of stress. Well, it comes with just the symptoms of stress. So we'll go over those a little bit later, but I want to differentiate two types of stress. We have the hyper alert stress, where you are in a constant state of autonomic arousal. This is where it presents as you need to keep yourself busy and you're not able to sit still or relax. And then we have our fatigue stress. And this is an exhaustive state where you lose motivation to do anything, even the things that you enjoy. So that hyper alert stress may not be burnout yet, but it can cause you to crash, leading to that fatigue stress and burnout later. So it's important to recognize those, because I find myself a lot of the times in that high alertness stress where I'm always trying to get things done and I'm in this constant state of stress, which will eventually lead to a crash. So
what you're saying is it kind of tends to start with that hyper alert state, and that's that early warning signs to pay attention to, and then it can proceed into that fatigue stress state.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of you have experienced or know of the consequences and symptoms of stress. So we're going to go over them quite quickly. I don't want to give you a long list. There is a lot of symptoms, but some of them are chronic fatigue or feeling tired all the time, insomnia, difficulty falling or staying asleep, increased illness from a lowered immune system, detachment, feeling of being disconnected from work, from family, from friends, from colleagues, and a decreased satisfaction or sense of accomplishment. I'm sure everyone's experienced some of these symptoms at some point, but when you start to feel a lot of them at the same time, that may be an indicator of burnout. So we have the symptoms, but how is burnout measured? How do we know if we actually have burnout? Well, again, it's probably that you're feeling a lot of those symptoms, but there is actually a way to measure it, and that's through the Maslow Burnout Inventory. It's a psychological assessment instrument used to measure burnout within an individual. It's one of the most widely recognized and utilized tools for researching and identifying job burnout. It focuses on 3 key areas that I had mentioned before. Number 1 is emotional exhaustion. Number 2 is depersonalization. And then number 3 is personal accomplishment. You will start to see a negative impact on all 3 of these key areas. So if you think you're experiencing burnout and you want to know for sure, you can take that test. I can give you a link, Alita,
Perfect.
to post with, so people can go on and take the test. I believe there's 22 questions in those 3 different areas. Okay, so next, what are the consequences of burnout? We know the symptoms, and I'm sure a lot of you already know the consequences, but as far as consequences, we'll divide them into 3 categories. We have our physical health consequences, which is chronic fatigue or constant feeling of exhaustion. We have increased risk of cardiovascular disease, which is well researched. We do know that cardiovascular disease is highly associated with stress, especially prolonged stress. And then gastrointestinal problems is another big one. At least digestive issues such as irritable bowel syndrome and ulcers. Then we also have our mental health consequences. And these come with depression, anxiety disorders, and cognitive impairment or having trouble concentrating or decision making. And then we have our professional consequences. And this is a big one for employers. If you start to see this in your employees, we have decreased productivity. Burnout can lead to reduced efficiency and effectiveness at work. We have a damaged professional relationships. People feel detached. There may be some cynicism with relationships with colleagues and supervisors. And then we have career stagnation or change. And Alita, I believe you had some statistics on this one from 2022, but some individuals may leave their jobs or change careers entirely due to burnout. I had mentioned that some healthcare workers, they're so focused on other people that they actually lose their passion for helping others, and they want a career change altogether.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the CMA puts out their survey every couple of years, and it focuses primarily on physicians in that report, obviously, but it was showing just over 50% of healthcare professionals who were not only looking at changing jobs, but ultimately leaving the profession completely in 2022. So a huge impact on an already highly underserviced, understaffed, I should say, ecosystem. If that many people being ready to leave, and they noted that burnout was one of the top influences as to why people were wanting to leave. So it's within this space, within the healthcare industry. I mean, we know that COVID was and has been and continues to be a massive impact on how our healthcare professionals have to show up day in, day out, and the level of pressure that they face during that period of heightened COVID and now post-COVID. But even before that, the research shows from the previous surveys as well that it was still very, very high. And I think what you mentioned there of people really focusing on helping others and prioritizing others versus the self, and really focusing on, showing up every day, at full force. These things are all very, very common within the healthcare industry, and I think have a big impact on how people can face burnout and tend to run into it within their healthcare career.
And it's important to remember, you can't pour from an empty glass. if you're not taking care of yourself, it is extremely hard to take care of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? And I think, through so many life changes, through COVID and being locked at home, I'm sure for many people who typically had a personal health routine of going to a gym or those external places for support, for physical activity, et cetera. I mean, that even if you wanted to keep up some of those activities, they were somewhat removed from an accessibility perspective. And we all know it, it's really easy to maintain the habit once you're in it, but holy man, is it ever easy to fall out of the habit as well, unfortunately.
And then that resistance builds, and we find that with everyone.
Right.
The more time you're away from it, the more resistance builds up, and the harder it is to start again.
Which tends to compile with that whole feeling of lack of, some self-resentment and all those things is, you'll feel better, it's the right decision, but for some reason, man, it's hard to get back into the gym or back into that practice that you had before of self-care, whether it's meditation, whether it's the gym, no matter what it is, man, it can be difficult to get back into that routine. So why don't you tell us some of those ways you think that people can start to battle it, and some of the three different principles that we were talking about: exercise, nutrition, and health that people can focus on?
Before we talk about the things that we can battle it for, let's talk a little bit about how it can happen, or how you can start to recognize it within the healthcare field.
Good idea.
Yeah. So number one is excessive workloads. Healthcare professionals often work long hours, unpredictable hours, such as being on call. These demanding schedules are coupled with emotional toll of caring for others, with whether that's serious illness or dying patients. An example of this might be nurses working double shifts with an understaffed hospital ward, where they're constantly needing to make these critical decisions without any time for rest. Number two is inefficiency or lack of support. And this could be insufficient support from management or colleagues that can contribute to feelings of isolation or being overwhelmed. An example is a junior doctor who receives minimal guidance and feels unsupported in making critical decisions. Number three is emotional exhaustion, the emotional toll of dealing with death or serious illness. An example is a hospice worker who might regularly comfort grieving families and carries that emotional weight with them. Number four, bureaucratic challenges, endless amounts of paperwork and administrative tasks on top of your duties. I know a lot of healthcare workers deal with this. Having to take notes after you're dealing with patients, and then you start to feel disconnected from your core purpose at work of helping others. You're so bogged down in paperwork that you're actually not seeing as many patients, and you don't feel like you're there to do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we definitely hear a lot of feedback that is a massive challenge that practitioners are facing on a daily basis, for sure.
And then the last one I want to go over is just a lack of resources. Working in an environment with inadequate resources, whether that be a lack of staffing, equipment, or facilities, that can lead to burnout. An example, emergency room physician working in a rural hospital, lacking essential equipment or constantly working under immense pressure. So I wanted to go over these workplace things that could lead to burnout, so employers can be aware of them and understand that the environment or the workplace environment can contribute to burnout as well. It's not just about the individual.
Yeah, I think, no, thanks for bringing us back to that. So from the CMA as well, and just from day-to-day interactions and constant feedback that we're hearing as well, that the bureaucratic challenges that you talked about and excessive workloads have shown up as another reason why a lot of healthcare professionals are looking to leave. And I think, when you're thinking about this as an employer, I'm sure none of these show up and they're not like, oh, wow, we're understaffed. Yes, everyone knows that these are some of the challenges that people face, but how does it show up? And then what are, I think it's great to talk today about a couple of the little things that people could do potentially within the workplace that are lower hanging fruit, and then some of the slightly more strategic or larger opportunities that can have an impact on these in the workplace. With that bureaucratic challenges and that administrative tasks overwhelming, the research shows that the EMRs and the systems that are in place are one of the top challenges that healthcare professionals are identifying as either actually helping them or truly not, and being a main source of frustration. You know, when you have to chart nonstop, or you have a system that doesn't support the way that you interact with patients and how you can document effectively, having to stay for hours on end just to chart after you've already put in a massive shift of helping people has been identified as a massive thing. So I think for employers, one opportunity is to look at the systems that you have in place, look at the tools that you've got and that people can use, and make sure that they've been integrated well and that they're working, and ask for feedback from the team members and from your staff on how they're using these systems and whether the systems are actually providing value to them or more hindrance, and then look at ways and tools that are out there that might help with streamlining some of those workflows, et cetera. I mean, we know AI is coming, and I'm really curious to see, we do have some partners on the platform or in Cherry Health and stuff as well, who we've talked to that are pretty excited about AI and its ability to support physicians and practitioners in streamlining a lot of these workflows. And I'm super curious to see how those come. But even just a better EMR that helps, you know, helps with charting and helps with taking these notes can be substantial in managing some of that workload and helping people out a bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, I've got some ideas too, but I'm curious from you, Nate, what are some of the lower hanging fruit that you think that, you know, an employer should be thinking about and aware of in how they run their practice, their clinic, their team, and how they manage their team? Any thoughts specifically on that?
As far as that, just putting systems in place that takes the workload off of your employees, making sure that they are taking time off, that are taking time for themselves. I know a lot of practitioners that have families, spending time away from their families and feeling like they need to be at work for their patients and feeling guilty for taking time off. It's something that I really work on with my employees, is making sure that they don't feel guilty about taking time off. Everyone needs time away from work. Everyone needs time away from those pressures. So making sure that your employees are utilizing that is critical to making sure that they can show up for work.
Yeah, and we've seen, you know, those organizations, those clinics and practices that have a bit of flexibility built in, and it doesn't always have to be time completely off. There's this term, you know, that we call work-life integration. I think once upon a time, we like to call it work-life balance. I don't know if that's a reality or if that's just a euphemism that is kind of going the way of the dodo, but there is this thing called work-life integration. And it's the understanding that, you know, you're going to put in some extra time over here. If you need that time back here, then the organization can help to support that. I mean, and when you're running a clinic and these are physicians who are, you know, keeping the doors open, or it's a pharmacy and they're keeping the doors open, it's not like there can be a level of flexibility of, hey, you just need to take the day today, go for it. So, you know, in reality, it's not a simple task to be able to find that as a business owner in this space, or as a clinic owner in this space. But there are ways to try and integrate it and get feedback, I think, from the staff in how they have ideas that could work for them, that really help. Whether that's maybe one day where they're completely working, we see it sometimes, one day where they're completely working from home and doing some video calls or phone call support that day, and able to do a lot of their administrative tasks that day. So they're not in clinic 5 days a week or at that full capacity. There's a bit of flexibility in where they're working at that time. Or whether it's built-in charting hours and hours for administrative tasks, or whether it's having really, really strong administrative teams there that can support the practitioners so that they get more time to do what it is they're there to do. And the administrators can support with some of those critical tasks of you know, running the business and running the administrative tasks through. Those are all some of the concepts that have come up through feedback that we've received of some of the ways that it can be helped. Another was through benefits, or through having some of the access to supports and access to, an exercise plan, a health spending account, often it's called, but flexible benefit plans that allow people to integrate and encourage people to integrate health into their, and self-care into their lives.
And one thing I want to point out is prevention. So a
Yeah.
lot of health benefits programs focus on a reactive approach rather than a preventative approach. And I think that's slowly starting to change with some flexible plans or health spending accounts.
Yeah.
But something like hiring a coach or a trainer, hiring a nutritionist is something that you can do that's more preventative before the burnout happens, rather than being reactive after it happens.
Yeah, and we've also seen that, and this isn't new in the industry or in employing people overall, but it is, I think, somewhat of a shift within running practices and within healthcare. But having strong benefits plans that are flexible for your team members and encouraging them to use those benefits, like having a coach, et cetera, early on, they're a differentiator. And so they allow you to attract and retain staff far better than those who don't have those types of plans in place. Now, not every, physicians are an interesting, and a lot of practitioners in this space are interesting because they are actually their own business and contracted to the organization. But there's also plenty of permanent staff and plenty of staff on the payroll and stuff too, where these benefits have a big impact. And there are benefit plans that also can support the independent contractor that can provide these types of values. So definitely worth looking into, and we might be able to put in the show notes some of those types of resources that are available.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, yeah, some of those light touch encouragement and support and reinforcement within the workplace can be really valuable in prevention too. I know in other industries, they have, a safety moment at the beginning of meetings, or they have, these recognition of, take a moment to talk about it, what safety looks like in the workplace. But I think talking about what person, self-care looks like in the workplace, it could be, most organizations have that weekly staff meeting or monthly at least, but are really not cost prohibitive. Low barrier of entry is to, at the beginning of those meetings or during those meetings, mark some time to say, how are we doing? Are we, encourage people to take that time for self-care, exercise, nutrition, etc. And being able to encourage people to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and having that group dynamic that encourages that, and get feedback of how it can be better integrated into the workplace. All some, potentially low-hanging fruit that can help the leaders within the space to implement within their own teams too. Yeah,
I really like that. Yeah.
Cool.
So let's get into some tools to prevent burnout or to help with burnout. When I deal with clients that are burned out, I go back to my 3 foundations that I covered before in my story: exercise, nutrition, and sleep. So not everything that causes burnout is necessarily in your control, but these foundations of health are in your immediate control. So any lack of these can contribute to burnout, but burnout can also make these foundations suffer. So let's focus on what we can control. When you are looking to make a change, it's always important to remember to start with small, sustainable habits. There's no point in adding more stress to your plate that will add to the burnout by making big lifestyle changes all at once. So as you build these habits within these health foundations, you'll actually find that you will, that one foundation will actually start to improve another. And we see that in clients all the time. If someone just starts exercising, they'll actually start putting healthier things into their body, and they'll start eating better. They're like, oh, I'm doing something good for my body. I need to start fueling it better. And then that exercise can actually lead to more sleep. There's a lot of research that shows that exercise improves sleep. So just focusing on one foundation and making it sustainable will actually cascade into the other foundations and improve those as well. So let's talk about the first foundation, exercise. Exercise, I'm sure you've heard of all of the benefits of it many times over. So I'm going to just go through a few that pertain to burnout and that directly impact that burnout. So number 1 is improved sleep. There is a lot of there's a lot of research that shows that exercise improves our quality of sleep. Enhanced cognitive function. Anytime you exercise, you're increasing blood flow to the brain. That will help improve memory, creativity, problem-solving skills, which will all help you in the workplace. It will also improve energy levels. It will increase your energy levels. At the beginning, it might take a little bit of energy out of the tank, but eventually it will add more fuel to the tank. And then the biggest one is stress reduction. Exercise will help reduce stress by triggering different endorphins or natural mood lifters in the brain, which can counteract the feelings of anxiety or depression. So when I look at exercise, I like to break it into two types. Specifically for this talk, we'll talk about two different types. We have our resistance training and we have our cardiovascular training. For resistance training, what that looks like is just using your muscles or your nervous system to do some type of resistive work, whether that's push-ups at home, whether that's using resistance bands or going to a gym and lifting weights. And then we have our cardiovascular training. And our cardiovascular training is working out your heart and your circulatory system. So it's just increasing your heart rate for an extended period of time. Exercise requirements differ greatly between all populations. So it's very important to just start out with what's sustainable. For some people, that might just be going for a 10-minute walk. For others, it might be parking a little bit further away from your destination and walking there. And for some people, it might be just taking the stairs instead of the elevator. And as you start to add this into your day, you'll start to see the benefits of exercise and you'll actually crave and want to do more. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to this gym, spend an hour there in an intimidating environment, especially at the start. It can be just doing some push-ups or sit-ups at home. It can be walking. It can be going for just a 5-minute jog and getting your heart rate up. So I don't want people to associate exercise with this thing that I need to do for an hour or this thing that's going to be extremely difficult and strenuous. It doesn't have to be at the start.
I think that's really, really important to note because, and even that it doesn't have to cause pain. You know, I think we have this boot camp and P90X and all of the CrossFit and all these super, super intense workouts that we think of as exercise. But I love that you're bringing those super relatable, you know, park at the farthest parking spot, take the stairs, get out for that just 10-minute morning walk when you first wake up to turn on the lights. Those simple things, and not trying to force yourself to maybe be at the same level you were when you lost the habit. Builds back up to it slowly so that you don't hit this painful wall early on that actually discourages you from keeping going and taking that next step. So those small, you know, and it could be, if we're talking from the workplace perspective, it could be, you know, maybe having the club that, hey, let's look at steps and let's all together commit to adding 3,000 steps a day as a group. You know, nothing like, hey, let's all hit 10,000 on day one, but wherever you're at, let's add 3,000 steps today. So, or, you know, on a daily basis and check in as a group at work and things like that. But those small changes over time, which then lead to, obviously, as you're saying, large changes.
And it really does help in a team environment or team setting, whether that's at work or whether that's going to a group class. Having those social supports and that social accountability is very important, rather than, you know, having a coach where some people think that they have to do it because they're coach, or it's this person that they have to hold themselves accountable, but rather it's just a group that wants you to be there, that's checking in with you. It's a lot less intimidating. And as a coach, it's very important for me to make sure that when I come to my clients, that I do find something that's sustainable for them. Because if I give them something that they can't be successful in following, I failed right from the beginning. I'm not going to improve their health. So yeah, again, really focusing on just making those small changes and allowing them to build over time.
Love it.
So how much exercise do we actually need? Well, for resistance training, it's about 2 days a week. That can be 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 days a week, but we want to build up to 2 days a week minimum. And then with cardiovascular or aerobic exercise, it's about 150 minutes of moderate, low to moderate activity per week. And this can be broken down into smaller segments, like, again, parking a little bit further away. But we eventually want to build up to combat to reduce stress and to combat the risk of cardiovascular disease, we do want to eventually get to about 150 minutes of moderate to low activity a week.
I've heard that walking is one of the best things that you can do in battling stress and to avoid burnout. And it's so accessible to most of us. I mean, depending on where you live and how safe it is to walk in your neighborhood and things like that, which are important to note. But that walking can be such a great tool used here. And the research has shown walk as if you've got somewhere to be.
Yeah.
Walk as if you've got somewhere to be, or as if someone might be following you. Now, I don't want to stress people out. Don't walk as if you're being chased, because that's probably not good for the cortisol levels either. But that whole walk as if you've got somewhere to be can be that's a huge part of that cardio, and just kind of gets it pumping a bit. And then they say the other type of walking, which is the more pensive, which is that slow, gentle walk where you're really thinking and allowing yourself to process things just in a way to process that stress, can be excellent too, but probably doesn't fall as much into that cardio level. But steps are steps. So getting out there and getting those steps in can definitely count towards that 150 a week.
And at the end of the day, again, just think you just need to elevate your heart rate for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
If you're sitting and you get up and start walking, you are elevating your heart rate.
Doing
for some
it.
people, it's more than others, but that's all you need to accomplish is elevate your heart rate more than your resting heart rate, and start with that.
Love that. You don't have to sign up for the boot camp. You don't have to be crying as you wobbly legs walk to the car afterwards. Just go out for a walk.
Exactly. No couch to 5Ks or couch to 10K.
Although I will say those are great because they try and help you walk so that you don't hit that pain point threshold right at the beginning too. But
it can give you a goal as well.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay, let's move on to our second foundation, nutrition.
Perfect.
And we'll again cover these benefits quite quickly because again, most people have heard them before. Number one is increased energy levels. So taking care of your macro and your micronutrients. So your macronutrients are your fuel. Making sure that you're fueling yourself properly is important. I know a lot of healthcare workers that get bogged down with work, and the next thing they know, it's the end of the day and they've hardly eaten all day, and that can lead to overeating at night. Another thing is mood regulation. Making sure that you're taking in the proper nutrients for your brain and body to function optimally. Different nutrients are also involved in the synthesis of neurotransmitters like serotonin, which regulates your mood. And then prevention of chronic diseases. Proper nutrition can help prevent chronic diseases such as obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. And these can come from overeating, especially with overeating carbs. So making sure that you have a proper balanced diet to make sure that you can prevent these chronic diseases in the future.
Yeah.
So,
and I'd add, from that employer perspective, I think some low-hanging fruit here to be able to help out your team is having some healthy snacks at the clinic. I think, and making sure water and drink like good, attractive, drinkable water, not bottled water. Let's not contribute there, but that, filtered water or good drinkable water is available too, because I don't know how many times we've all gotten to the end of the day and gone, did I drink any water today? But, having those healthy snacks, whether it's fruit, some vegetables, things like that, you name it. I mean, we all deep down, we probably know what most of those healthy type snacks are. But, a lot of people working in different environments, the vending machine is full of not so healthy snacks versus having easy access to healthy snacks at the office that people can dig into, and then access to clean, drinkable water that people are actually going to enjoy drinking or feel attracted to drink versus going all day and realizing you haven't even had a sip.
Or having to think about carrying a water bottle with you all day because you don't have access to water. Yeah,
absolutely.
So how do we now incorporate nutrition? When it comes to nutrition, as far as myself, I find that people are less likely to be successful if you tell them what to eat and when to eat it. So I focus on guidelines. If you give somebody guidelines and let them have more autonomy over what they're eating, then I find that people tend to be a lot more successful in following or engaging in a healthy diet. So some of the guidelines: eat a healthy, balanced diet. This includes a lot of food groups, so you can make sure that you're getting the nutrients that you need. And it's important to make sure that you are a little bit conscious of what you feel when you're eating things. Everyone reacts differently to different foods. So note how you feel when you're eating those foods, but you do want to eat a variety of foods. The next one, and one of the most important, is control your portion sizes. Eating large portions can lead to overeating, and then also too little of portion sizes. Again, let's say we get busy during the day, we're not prepared, we don't have meals packed, and we get bogged down in work. And then the end of the day comes and we end up overeating and we choose less healthy options. When we have those cravings at night, it usually means that we're not eating enough throughout the day. The next one, which you covered, stay hydrated. A lot of people can get cognitive impairment or mental fatigue just from not drinking enough water. If water isn't easily accessible, bring a water bottle to work. Have it so you can sip on it between patients. And then the next one, avoid or limit processed foods. Foods that are high in sugar, they've got a lot of other crap in them. They're usually stripped of their nutrients. So try to stick to whole foods. And then pay attention to nutrient timing. Again, this goes back to getting bogged down in work. Even having little convenient snacks at work, just so you can fuel yourself through the end of the day. Then when you get to the end of the day, you're not completely exhausted. And most people, when they're exhausted at the end of the day, if you ask them what they ate that day, they are under eating.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they're grabbing that choice that's probably not the best for them.
Exactly, because they're hungry right now.
Yeah.
And then the final one is consider supplements if necessary. If you can't get all of your nutrients in through a healthy balanced diet, then consider supplements, whether it's vitamins that you're buying, whether it's a green powder that you're buying, whether it's protein powder. Make sure that you're getting your nutrients in. That is number one, is get your nutrients in no matter what. So again, if that means that you have to get supplements for convenience, then do that.
It sounds like though people have to kind of figure out a bit of a baseline.
Yes.
Because if you don't get that baseline and understand a little bit, so that could come through tracking, and doesn't have to be to the umpteenth perfect grams and calories and stuff, but at least getting a good basis of where you're at. It's so that you understand what you might be missing out on, and then you can track how you're feeling when you're eating it. Probably somewhat required to get started as well.
We always start with just making sure you're fueling yourself enough.
Yeah.
Here's the amount of calories you need to hit. Just write down or track how many calories you're taking in, not necessarily what you're eating, but just get your fueling right to start. And then we can start to substitute some of your options for more healthy options.
Gotcha. Love it.
Yeah. So that covers nutrition. Next, the final foundation is sleep. And to me, this is the most important foundation. If you do not have your sleep, you do not have anything else. I suffered from sleep problems for a majority of my life, and I finally figured them out, and my life got exponentially better. You have trouble making good choices when you're underslept. So this is one of the most important questions we have on our consultations that we ask every one of our clients is, how much are you sleeping? And do you feel rested in the morning? If you're sleeping enough, but you're not feeling rested, well, that is a great indicator of burnout. If you're tired all the time, either something is happening in your sleep or you are too stressed and that is impacting your sleep.
Right.
So how do we improve our sleep? Well, again, I just like to give basic guidelines, and they are quite simple, but they are extremely important. So number one is create a bedtime routine. Establish a ritual or something that you do before bed, and that is not taking your phone and scrolling on a screen. And I'll get to light later, but create a calming bedtime routine that calms down your nervous system and sets the internal environment for sleep. The next is create a consistent sleep-wake schedule. You want to be going to bed and waking up at relatively the same time, give or take an hour, to make sure that your body gets into that circadian rhythm. Your body wants to find a habit or a rhythm. So it is important to keep your bedtime and your wake time consistent. And again, that might change 1 or 2 days a week, but for the most of the week, you want to make sure that those are consistent.
I mean, we do have a lot of shift workers in the industry as well.
Yes.
And so, recognizing that, and I was a shift worker myself for a few years, recognizing that that's not always the easiest, but using some of the bedtime routine tools, even if it's morning and you're going to be sleeping through the day because you just work the night shift. But if you can use those routines, even if you are, in that different stage of your work shift cycle, still critical for being able to hopefully fall asleep effectively and stay asleep throughout that period of time, whether sometimes it's changing or not. And we know shift work is tough on the body, but it's truly a reality within the healthcare workers life cycle.
Yeah, and with that, harder to control in the winter, but easier in the summer, is exposing yourself to light. Natural light or sunlight sets our circadian rhythm. So you can also do this with artificial light. If you are on night shifts, you can use artificial light. They have those
The red lights, the LED bands, yeah.
Yeah, and that mimic sunlight. The sunlight goes into your eyes and tells your brain whether to be awake or alert. So there are tools that can be utilized if you're on shift work and you're working night shifts to help you stay more alert, awake, and have less negative impacts on your health.
Love it.
The next one is make your environment sleep friendly. This means having a dark room. We want to avoid all light in our room when we're sleeping. Keeping a cool environment. Our bodies sleep best, especially get into REM sleep best when the environment is cool. We need our body temperature to lower during sleep. And then having a quality mattress, pillows, sheets, etc. That is important to make sure that you don't heat up too much at night. And it's different for everyone. So find what works best for you. Limit exposure to screens. It's blue light, but it's also bright light that tells your brain to be awake and alert. So if you're looking at a screen before bed, it is not telling you to go to sleep. It can interrupt that release of melatonin in the brain that can keep you up and disrupt your sleep. That melatonin release is so important. If you want to make sure that you get it, go look at low-angled sunlight towards the end of the day. So go watch the sunset. Don't look directly at the sun, but make sure that you're getting that low-angle sunlight, and that will stimulate the release of melatonin. Watch what you eat and drink. Your digestive system really impacts your sleep. If you are eating a heavy meal within 1 to 2 hours of falling asleep, that digestive system, that your digestive system working hard, will start to impact your sleep. So if you're going to eat, try to do it at maximum 2 hours before bed. Try to make it a little longer. Some people say even closer to 4 hours before bed. And if you're going to eat before bed, if you don't have a choice, let's say you've worked a late night shift, you don't have a choice, and you need to eat something that has more carbohydrates, that's easier to digest. Don't go eating a steak where you have to break down the protein, the fat takes longer to digest. Eat something a little bit more simpler that's going to satisfy you and get you to sleep.
Nice.
And then the last one, which I mentioned before, is expose yourself to natural light. That sets our circadian rhythm. Ideally, sunlight exposure in the morning, going for a quick walk after you wake up, and then in the evening, which will stimulate that melatonin release and help you sleep more at night. So start with your sleep. If you are having trouble sleeping, sure, exercise might help with your sleep, but that's the thing that you need to fix first, because that is going to help you make better choices and give you the energy in order to make better health decisions.
Gotcha. Sleep first, then get out there and take those, manageable steps, and then focus on that nutrition, and hopefully those things have that cascading effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that covers the 3 things that we can do, the 3 foundations to help prevent burnout. Every single one of those will help with burnout. Figure out what you can manage, though.
Love it. And being mindful of time, we always run over a little bit from the 45 minutes, but I think that's okay, because I think the topic is worthy of a little bit of that extra time. But rounding it up, summarizing a bit for everyone. If you can give the list of those various recommendations to prevent physician burnout, what is that list for you? And that top things that people should think about as they try and avoid and battle being in current burnout.
Focus on your foundations. Exercise, get some type of cardiovascular or resistance training in, incorporate it into your day if you don't have the time. Nutrition, eat whole foods, and make sure you have enough to fuel yourself. And then sleep. Focus on sleep hygiene. Create the environment and the setting for you to get a good night's sleep.
Amazing. I think one of the things you said before, which is probably one of the most important, is don't overdo it. Think small incremental steps towards change so that you don't stress yourself out more in trying to make this change to do better than you were even beforehand. So small incremental change towards the right direction, and then support each other. You know, within this healthcare system, we love to care for others. You know, everyone's trying to work together to make the world a better place, truly. But within the workplace, we can do that too. So if you are a leader, and anyone can be a leader within your team, within your organization, help those around you to notice the factors of burnout that might be creeping up on them, whether it's those early hyperactive types of, hey, I can't sit still indicators early on, or whether later on that person seems to be disengaging from things that used to bring them passion and the workplace and others around them. Watch out for each other. Help point it out. And as a leader within your organization, if you have the authority, if you have that ability, bring in some of those benefits, bring in some of those group activities, bring in some of those supports like good snacks in the office that can help people to, you know, incrementally make those changes in the right direction as well. Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts from you, Nate, that you think people should think about in this overall battle to try and stay healthy and stay sane?
If you don't know where to start and you have trouble holding yourself accountable, hire a professional. Yeah. That's like I say in any industry, whether it's your health, whether it's buying something, hire a professional that can help you and help keep you accountable and help guide you on how to start. Love that. Yeah.
So in the show notes, you know, and in the resources that'll come, we'll have Nate's contact information. We'll bring in some of the other tools and concepts that came out of the conversation as well. But as always, you know, if anyone has any ideas of future conversations that they think would add value to these talks, please let us know. And at that, I think we'll wrap up and look forward to having Nate on another Cherry Live sometime soon to continue the conversation around health and fitness as we keep this conversation going.
Thank you, Alita and Cherry Health, for having me on.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.